because landlords are not prepared to negotiate in this situation. And I'm seeing a lot of landlords being flat-footed on this issue. They don't have data to show where their numbers should be. They don't know what the bank is going to allow or not allow. This is just a gray area. Small businesses are looking for some relief. Now, the first place I would recommend for relief for tenants is going to be the Small Business Administration. There's tons of links there. There are grants now. There are forgivable loans that you don't have to pay back that are going to cover payroll. They're going to cover your rent in some cases. It's a broad array of expenses that the government is prepared to help you push up your cash flow during these few months. I still think that tenants should be talking to the landlord because some of them may not have a cash flow that will be able to hold them over for 2 or 3 months. Low sales plus future uncertainty is going to cause tenants to hold on to cash. They're not going to pay a lot of bills. Landlords are going to want their bills paid. You're going to have to negotiate to make things happen. My advice is that if you can pay your rent because you manage your cash well, I think you should do that. That makes sense. It's the ethical thing to do. It's going to earn a lot of points with your landlord, and it's going to allow the landlord to focus on more problematic cases. It will give you an amazing amount of grace when you need it later. So if you don't need to negotiate now, I don't think you should. But if you do need to negotiate now, here are some tips that you can do. Get help to do this. Get a broker, the broker that helped you move into your space, or a knowledgeable broker in your market to help you have these conversations with the landlord. Why? Because you need to have someone that can speak to the situation, bring as much context as possible, and be able to quantify what you need. That's critical. Asking for help because it's an emergency will not get you what you want. I'm going to explain why that's not an effective strategy by using examples that were tried on me as a landlord broker. And I'll start off by saying that I've been inundated with calls from some of my most problematic tenants first that always had trouble paying rent. And this is in various properties that I list. And these guys were calling and saying, hey, well, something bad's about to happen, so I can't pay rent. What are you going to do about it? Almost verbatim what they asked. And the first thing I do is look at their payment history. And if they already have a record of not paying consistently or they were always late, I will tell you right now, landlords aren't going to give you the best they can do because they may not want you that much anyway. They're not going to put themselves out to increase their credit risk for a tenant that's already behind. What's your excuse before COVID-19? You know, business should be okay. And if you're not able to pay rent, that's a cash flow problem. That's a management problem. That's not the crisis. That's something else. And that has to be dealt with like everything else. And if the crisis wasn't going on, I'd probably be putting them in default. And I might do the same thing anyway for those type of tenants. That sounds heartless, but please understand that investors, that's a business too. And I just want you to understand that side because that's what that's how the landlord looks at your deal. Now, if you are in good standing, if you have a good payment history and you're doing the right things, you're an ethical person and they know that, you got some leverage here. There are ways to ask the landlord for concessions, specific things that you can get approved. It needs to coincide with the legislation that's going out. I'm anticipating a moratorium on mortgages. They haven't gotten to the banks yet. I think they're working on it. I know Trump and his Treasury Secretary, I think was a real estate guy. They understand real estate. I mean, these guys go deep in real estate. So I have no doubt that they understand the potential havoc this can wreak if they don't address the mortgage issue. So I believe that there's going to be a moratorium at some point. When that happens, I think it's appropriate to speak to that with the landlords. But you want to understand what it is first. Second thing, you want to know what you can afford to pay. If you can't afford to pay anything, that's the toughest position because is that really true? Can you pay something, based on the cash flow? Or if you're being conservative, what can you pay? And can you quantify that? So the short answer, if you're a tenant working on this, is to be truthful, is to quantify what you want, and then ask for it, okay? And then be persistent. Because the landlord's going to push back and they're going to counter like I do with my tenants. But I tell you this, the good tenants that I know are good payers and they're assets to the properties that I list, we're going to do everything we can to keep them. And if they ask for the right things, I've gone a step further. I volunteered certain things that I think would be good to offer. Gray area. Institutional guys are going to hold firm, like the big box retail people, investors that own property on a large scale. Those guys are going to hold firm because they have parameters that they're kind of bound to. The banks are going to hold them to a lot of their numbers. The smaller real estate investment trust, the individual owners of properties, we're going to see a lot more flexibility. The mom and pops out there that own a building or two, they're going to have a lot of flexibility. And if they own their building outright, that's why ownership matters. You have to know what type of owner you're dealing with. If they own their building outright, they'll have a lot more flexibility to do things to help you out. I've seen a lot of mom and pop owners step up and do some pretty awesome things with their tenants. I don't think it's wise. They're offering 3-month moratoriums on rent. I don't know how they're going to afford that later. What if 3 months turns into 6 months? What if their bank says, I don't agree with that? And you still have to pay your mortgage, but you're not getting cash flow. These are investments, and without cash flow, it doesn't work. Here's the other problem. If the investor purchased the property for cash flow, they usually have a lot more room to adjust rents. If the owner or investor purchased the property for appreciation, like we see a lot of in Greenway Plaza or the Woodlands or any of the hot markets in Houston, they already bought that at a very low cap rate. There was not a lot of room there to adjust rents. Their rents are pretty tight, so they don't have a lot of room to adjust rents. What are they going to do? They're going to have some issues. We want to do everything we can to help the owners and the small business community in this crisis by giving you guys actionable data. So I hope this is entertaining and also educational. And if you know someone that can benefit from this information, please share this with someone that would find it of value. And if someone needs help in this arena, we're ready. We're taking care of business owners right now. We're taking care of investors that own properties right now throughout the state of Texas. And help us out by leaving a comment and a like and sharing this with someone that would find value in it. So thank you so much. Okay, let's get back to it.